Good evening, everyone. It's Denise from Dobby Books. How are you? I'm so glad to be with you right now. I want to cover what I finished reading and then some new books that I got and perhaps one that I'm still reading. Okay, so let's get started so we don't keep going. The book I finished, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I finished this around 2 or 3 o'clock this morning. I couldn't sleep, so I got up and I read this. It was great. I don't think I will ever tire of this book. It just ends on such a hopeful note. And you see Francie and her brother and their mother going through times where it's really dark. And I can imagine as a mother, their mother Katie worrying about the children and not having enough food for them and having to work so hard. And towards the end, as the children get older and they're able to help, it eases up that difficulty. And of course, this was early 20th century. So to graduate from high school was a big deal. Right now, we just expect it. It's a good thing we expect it. But back here, in these times, going to high school was a fairly new thing. Most kids would finish through middle school and leave at 14. And done deal. And a lot of kids who were poor couldn't finish high school because now they were old enough to work and they had to help the family. And you see that situation with Francie and her brother Neely, but Katie insists on the children finishing their education. She's not sure how they're going to do it, but they figure it out. They figure out a way. And I think it's just wonderful to see them just pushing forward. They don't have all the answers, but you don't need all the answers in that moment. You just need that determination and the commitment to do this. And as you go along, as you move forward on that journey, the answers come to you. And I just love stories like this. So A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And if you notice, I have 2 little green dots here because ever since I started placing the green dots on books that I have finished, if I've read that book more than once, I put another dot. I've read this book more than twice, but I've only done the green dot, red dot, yellow dot thing in the last couple of years. So there'll be more dots on here as we go along. Okay. And the one that I'm just about finished with, and I really am enjoying, is the YA fiction Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. This is where I am. So I only have this little tiny bit to go. What a delightful story. In general, Kathy and her twin sister Wren, they have suffered the trauma of a mother who left them when they were 8 years old and just did not come back. And of course, that does affect them later in life. Trauma will always come back to kick you in the butt. You have to confront it. You have to call it by its name and learn how to work your way through it. And neither one of the twins has done that yet. So you see how that trauma is manifesting in their college life, how it affects their ability to have relationships, to trust another person. You see in these twins, one wants to get as far away from home as possible, and the other one would rather stay home, stay safe. Kathy would rather stay in her room where it's safe. Wren just wants to go out and party. Very interesting how you look at kids growing up in the same family, undergoing the same traumas, but how they deal with that differently. Very interesting. You see how both girls are dealing with their trauma incorrectly and how eventually they're learning that that's exactly the mistake they're making. And if they want to be healthy adults, they need to address this trauma in a healthy manner. And I love how the story is unfolding and how Kathy is starting to come out of her shell, how she's allowing more people into her life. She's now friends with her roommate, Reagan, who's this very self-confident, very push-forward kind of personality. And the friend or the ex-boyfriend of Reagan, Levi. And just what a wonderful, delightful, adorable character Levi is, and how much he helps Kathy to come out of her shell. So it's just really neat to see how it unfolds. It's great to read YA fiction at my old age and really enjoy this. So Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell is great. And again, I do have book 1 of the 4-volume manga series, graphic novel. I'm still debating whether I want to get the other 3. I don't yet know. So that's where I am there. Those are the books that I have either finished or I'm just about done with. I have not yet started the other 2 that I mentioned last week, which is Monster Calling. I haven't finished this one yet. I haven't started it yet. And then the other one, which I definitely am going to read, by James Norbury, The Dog Who Followed the Moon. These are going to be my next TBA reads. Now, the books that I got recently are these. This is the book that I am reading along with Robert G. Reader of Books on the Roman Emperors, Caligula, by Aloys Winterling. This is the same one that he is reading. I also think that I'm going to go ahead and read so Caligula by Aloys Winterling with Robert G. Reader of Books. We're reading through the Roman Emperors. The next one I got, I purchased because it was mentioned in my historiography text, one of the sources. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. This is by Jeffrey S. Bennett, When the Sun Danced, Myth, Miracles, and Modernity in Early 20th Century Portugal. And of course, this is covering the miracle of Lourdes in Fatima, Lourdes is Saint Bernadette. In Fatima, Portugal, in during World War I, there were 3 peasant children, very simple shepherd children, who claimed to have seen the Blessed Mother. And she appeared to them on the 13th of every month. But it's a very famous, miraculous event in Catholic Church history. And at the time of the last apparition or vision, as you will, there was something called the miracle of the sun. And the day of that last apparition, word had gotten out that these children were having these visions. So of course the people in Portugal were very devout, and more and more and more were coming once a month to be there with the children while they had their apparition. And by the time this last vision happened, there were about 70,000 people present. And in that crowd were not just the people who were the faithful local people, and people everywhere, but also the ones that were, I would describe as like the opposite, the enemies. They were the ones that were saying this is just a hoax, this is nothing, this is nonsense. They gave the children and their families such a hard time during this whole process that was happening over several months. They were there as well. And basically the miracle of the sun is that it was pouring rain that day, and at a certain point people had looked up and they noticed that the sun was moving, like kind of like spinning slowly. And they were mesmerized by this. They were looking at the sun. You go blind when you look at the sun. So here's 70,000 people looking up at the sky, watching the sun start to twirl, and then it swirls faster and faster and faster, and they saw colors, and then it looked like this twirling sun was, crashing to the earth. So that was this big high point of this particular occurrence. And all of a sudden, everything stopped. Next thing, people blinked, and the sun was where it had been. But when they looked around, the ground was dry, their clothes was dry. It was as if it had never rained. So that's why it was called the miracle of the sun, not just because the sun danced, but because people were drenched, even if they had umbrellas, because it was mud. There was no pavement for them to stand on. So they were muddy and they were wet from the rain. But after this miracle of the sun, they looked around, their clothes were dry. Everything was dry, as if nothing had happened. So it's a very significant occurrence in Catholic Church history, again, during World War I. So this talks about that, but in a very academic way. Um, it says here, now the author is Jeffrey S. Bennett. He is an assistant professor of sociology and religious studies at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. This is a volume in the series of studies in religion and culture. This particular one was published in, I'm looking, I can't see the year. Oh, 2012. So at the time this book was published in 2012, Jeffrey Bennett was an assistant professor. And just a little snippet. I already told you the background story, but just a little bit on the book itself, the point of view, I guess. In When the Sun Danced, Jeffrey Bennett provides a sustained analysis of the socio-political context of the 1917 apparition of the Virgin Mary in Fatima, Portugal. This study of the intertwining of popular religious movements with Portuguese political history is a must-read for anyone interested in visions, religious experience, and the appropriation of religious movements for political purposes. And this was a review by Sandra Zimdar-Swartz from the University of Kansas. So I thought this was very interesting. This is a University of Virginia Press publication. This is going to be interesting, and this will all be part of my history studies on my own. Next one. Now this book here is the one that I'm going to be doing my final YA class project on. We could do literary criticism. I passed on that. We could do a creative project. I passed on that. And the only other one that I think I really am going to do is to do a lesson plan. I used to do lesson plans with objectives and the whole nine years ago when I was teaching my kids for those few years at home. I had a lot of help with that. But in this one, we're going to have to look at the California standards for a particular grade and put those in there. And it's new for me, but I can handle it. And I'm going to base the lesson on this particular book, All the Stars Denied by Guadalupe, Garcia, McCall. And this is a story basically of a Mexican-American family living in Texas during the Depression. And as some of you may be aware, that during the Depression, because they were so worried about the economy and jobs, people were blaming the Mexicans for taking their jobs. So what did our brilliant administration do at that time? They decided to deport these Mexicans so that they could resolve the job issue in the Depression. And if any of you are familiar with that history, I'm sure you know how much that resolved the job issue during the Depression. And many of those people that were deported were born and raised in the United States. They were of Mexican heritage, ethnicity, but they'd never lived in Mexico. And many of them didn't even speak the language. So it's like sending us to a foreign country. They were sent to a foreign country, just dumped there. And I just thought this was a very important story. And I could put together a lesson plan that would help them learn about the Depression, read some fiction that has an experience happening during that time in history, and then apply it to today's contemporary issues. And I thought that would be good. And because this is considered on a 8th grade level, that's the grade level that I will have to put together a lesson plan for, with learning objectives, etc. So, and it's this thick, and it's a hardbound. I thought it was a paperback, but I'm fine with that. But I'm going to be reading like a crazy woman. I've got to get this done by next week. So I've got maybe 7 days. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Honestly, people, tomorrow is my last class, my capstone. I finished my capstone essay. I just have to polish it up. We have to design our web page. I finished that today. We also had to either do a presentation on our project or a poster. And because I get panic attacks in front of a group of people, I had to choose the poster because then I'm more one-on-one, just a couple of people. It works better for me. So that's what I'm doing there. And that's tomorrow. And after that, no more meetings. And I'm done with that one class. And hopefully I will be freed up and be able to not only get this YA lesson plan done, but my historiography essay. I think that's the one that's causing me the most anxiety because I really don't feel like there's enough time to get it all done. So I will just do the best I can. All right, last one now that I've talked your ear off. This last one I also thought was a paperback. It just looked like a paperback. And I guess because they had a stock photo, I couldn't really tell. And of course, I wanted to get this because it's related to my research on Philip Pullman. And this is the definitive guide to Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials by Laurie Frost. And it's a great reference to the trilogy, which I know will also be helpful with the other books in this series, like the Book of Dust. And there are now 3 books in that series about dust. And I think today or yesterday, they published the 3rd book in the Dust series by Philip Pullman. I'd love to get First and First from the UK. I'm working on that as we speak. But this is Demons and Demons. So it's talking the difference about the demons in the terminology that Philip Pullman used, and then the one that we're more familiar with, explaining the difference of that. And then of course they have terms. So here's certain references and explanations and context. And in the table of contents, the general topics covered are the characters, places, and peoples, creatures, beings, and extraordinary humans, the alethiometer, the alethiometer, the subtle knife, the amber spyglass, philosophy, let's try that again, philosophy, psychology, and theology, applied metaphysics, applied sciences and technology, the natural sciences, social structures of the world, language and diction, allusions, epigraphs, and reference. It really is a wonderful, comprehensive, fantastic resource. I'm just thrilled with this book, and it's in excellent condition. The only thing was this part of the dust cover ripped, and they had taped it to prevent any further damage. It really is in wonderful condition. Look at this. The pages are not even yellowed, and the spine is nice and strong. I'm gonna, if this, and this is what the book itself looks like without the dust cover. Isn't that beautiful? I just think it's wonderful. Great, beautiful books really are just always worth having. To just look at a book and to love its beauty and how well it was put together. And I don't know, it makes me happy inside when I'm looking at a beautiful quality book. So there we go. So that is the other book that I got. And that's what I've been doing this week. And I'm going to be a crazy woman for the next 7 days. Lots of coffee, very little sleep, high stress, but I'll survive. I just want to get my classes done. I want to get my grades out. And then I'll be going to, the plan is to start graduate school in the fall. And right now it's not a master's. I'm shooting for a certificate in TESOL, T-E-S-O-L, T-E-S-L, for now. For now, that may change, but I've already registered. I've already been set up with my graduate account and the whole 9. And I can take my classes in the evening. It's 1 year long. And maybe later on I'll explain to you why I'm doing TESOL right now. And that's it, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with me. And, this is also a read-along with fellow booktuber Marilyn Maya Mendoza. And she and I both gab about it. We send each other messages back and forth on Goodreads about what we're reading. And I'm so glad I did this because Marilyn's been wonderful, and this was the best pick in the world. So thank you, Marilyn. Okay, everybody. Have a wonderful week. I will see you in a few days, and I love you all. Bye-bye.